And actually, I'll bring it right up to Russ Dorsey, who joins us right now. Bally Sports, National MLB Insider, one of my boys, joining us on FT Live. Russ, what's going on? I didn't think we were going to start this way. First off, always looking smooth as hell. It's one of the best dressers in the biz. And looking like he's in like the penthouse American Psycho apartment or something like that. What's up, man?
Scotty, what's going on? AJ Kratzy, I'm doing well. How you guys doing?
Good. I mean, you're a Midwest guy, so before we get to Chicago and some other national topics, we just had Spencer Torkelson on. Yeah. Your thoughts on the Detroit Tigers? I was telling these guys, I mean, they're not being talked about at all. They were terrible last year. This was supposed to be the time when they were good. And my point was, in terms of spending, like they got Javi Baez, they've gotten Eduardo Rodriguez, they've made a few other smaller signings. They haven't thrown down like they used to, and that's going to hurt them because they've done okay in terms of prospecting, in terms of drafting and developing. So unless you're just developing all studs, like say the Cleveland Guardians they've done a much better job, right? In their trades, in their signings. Detroit, you have to make up for that if you didn't do that well by signing guys, and it's not like they're going out and spending like the Padres.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing when I look at the Tigers, first and foremost, you want that guy that you just had on, Spencer Torkelson, who was awesome with you guys. Like, you need him to be the 1-1 pick that you thought he was going to be. And he's one of the guys I wrote about a couple of weeks ago as being a bounce back guy, right? Like, he's a guy that has always been able to hit. He's never been a pull only guy. He can hit to all field. So I would expect that they're going to give him every opportunity to figure it out at the big league level. But one of the reasons I don't think it's worked out for the Tigers recently is because they put so much stock in their farm system into their pitching, and rightfully so, like with guys like Casey Mize and Alex Faedo and Spencer Turnbull. And then when all of those guys get hurt and you make your big free agent acquisition of Eduardo Rodriguez, it's going to put you at a deficit when it comes to starting pitching. And so once you get some of those guys healthy, I think they would be in a much better place than we saw them last year. But yeah, I understand why a Tigers fan would look and say, man, we used to have Prince and Miggy and Torrey and Victor Martinez was here, and we had Verlander and Scherzer at one point, and now we don't have that. I can understand that frustration.
It's got to be frustrating, right? If you're a Tigers fan. Because, again, Mike Ilitch used to just open up the checkbook and be like, I'll sign everybody. We want to come to Detroit? Here's $50 million. Come to Detroit. And guys did it. And it was great. Like, going in there and playing those guys, you were like, Detroit was rocking.
That's what I'm saying.
America was rocking.
Exactly. But that's what I'm saying. Like, Kratzy, I mean, sure, they haven't developed like they thought they have as quickly, but they're not throwing down on players. I guarantee if they just did what the Padres did this past offseason, I'm just using them as an example because it's easy right now, we'd be talking a lot more about the Tigers, Kratzy, no?
Absolutely. But I think if you would really push AJ Hinch, I think he's not necessarily the decision maker, but I think when he came here to Detroit, probably the thought was, hey, we could do kind of what we did with the Astros. And just like Russ said, like, you need a Spencer Torkelson to be the 1-1. You need him to be the, is he the Carlos Correa or is he the Jose Altuve of their rebuild? And I think it's something that until somebody steps up like that, why go out and spend? Who are the Tigers going to go get? I felt like Baez was a piece, especially with the other shortstops that were coming in the next few years. I felt like he was a piece to put in there. I felt like Rodriguez, Eddie was a perfect piece to kind of solidify, give you 25, 30 starts, but they need some of their guys in the system to step up. And like Russ said, just a lot of injuries, but it's also like, let's pump the brakes. It's the Midwest. Like, I get it. It's a big market, but it's not, it's not East Coast love, that kind of style.
Yeah. I mean, Russ, you tell me what's going on out there in the Midwest right now. Like, who's dominating the headlines in the Central, either side in baseball?
All right. Let's start with we're talking about the AL Central right now. We'll stick over there. To me, I think the team to beat is still the Cleveland Guardians. And they were a team last year that nobody expected to do anything. They were a team that, okay, they have young kids. They're going to be rebuilding. Yeah, they have Shane Bieber, who's been a Cy Young winner. But at the same time, they're bringing all these young kids to the big league level. And they beat everybody, right? They just you look up June, July, August, they're like, all right, the Cleveland Guardians are going to come back to earth. And they never did. And beat teams like the Chicago White Sox, who disappointed, and beat teams like the Minnesota Twins, who, were hurt and, kind of fell off towards the end of the season. And you go into this year where those kids are a year older now. You have a superstar talent in Jose Ramirez, who has long been one of the most underrated players in the game. And they're always going to have starting pitching. Like, there's the one thing you can count on with the Cleveland Guardians, it's starting pitching. Now, I think the team that will have something to say about that this year, to me, is the Minnesota Twins, with what they've been able to do with their starting pitching. They were fortunate and got back into the Carlos Correa business in the end of the offseason. And then if you can keep Byron Buxton healthy, that guy is the most dynamic player in all of baseball.
So wait, you missed a team.
AJ, did I? Did I miss a team?
You missed
That
a
was
team.
on
Oh,
purpose.
there's a bobble somewhere.
Yeah,
He was trolling you, AJ.
yeah, you missed it. Dude, aren't you in Chicago? Didn't you forget a team?
This
in
is
Central?
beautiful Lake Michigan right there, AJ. Yes.
I can't see it. It's too foggy behind you.
It's one of those days. It's one of those days.
Wait, you forgot a team. What about? There's a team in Chicago that's in the AL Central that was supposed to win, right? Where
The key words there, AJ, was supposed to.
Well, they signed Benintendi. They signed Benintendi, and they signed Benintendi.
Pedro Gaffal.
Yeah,
Promised land.
But no White Sox love here.
All right, here's my thing, AJ, and shout out to my dad because I know he's watching, big White Sox fan. That's my thing, AJ. Like, they were supposed to be on this ascension, right? They were the team in the end of 2021 when they went to the postseason. They won the AL Central, and people are like, okay, look out for the Chicago White Sox. And then they go to Houston and they get their butts kicked. And it's like, okay, like, that's a real next couple of years, you saw why the Astros were looked at as that. They come into 2022, all the stories and headlines about Tony La Russa, those things were there. But at the end of the day, those guys who they thought were going to be so good in your Yohan Moncadas and Eloy Jimenez and Luis Robert, those guys had to come out and produce and perform, and they didn't do that. And when I look at the White Sox this year, who's going to be the leader in that clubhouse? Because they let their leader, Jose Abreu, who has been a great citizen for the sport, the city of Chicago, and the White Sox, go down to Houston. And so who's going to be the guy that steps up in that room, right? Tony La Russa is no longer the manager. Pedro Gaffal is in there, so that scapegoat is no longer there for them. Those guys have to go out there and produce, because you look at it now, this might be their last real opportunity, because Lucas Giolito, free agent after this season. You got TA, a free agent after next season, and then Eloy and Moncada, the free agents the year after that. So this might be their last real shot as a group to get this thing done.
All right, so then hold on.
Go ahead,
I got one quick follow-up.
Finish up.
Russell, so you grew up in Chicago, right? You just said your dad was a White Sox fan. You had to cover the Cubs. Mm-hmm. So wait, were you a White Sox fan or a Cubs fan growing up? It's going to depend where the interview goes from here. Your answer is going to determine.
I'm going to give you the PC answer that I give everybody.
I want the real answer.
I'll give you that, but I have to lead with the PC answer. As a reporter, I am unbiased. My dad grew up.
As a reporter, I'm unbiased too.
My dad grew up on the west side of Chicago, fan of the Go-Go Sox, Louis Aparicio, Nellie Fox, all those guys. As a kid, I was a fan of the Chicago White Sox. And in 2005, I was in the 5th grade when you guys won it all, AJ. Are you happy?
That makes me much happier. But I'm sorry you had to cover the Cubs for a while, so I apologize to you and your family. But
the checks don't write themselves, AJ.
That's true. Now, the follow-up is, was it Konerko? Who was your favorite player?
My favorite player was actually, and still is to this day, Jose Valentin. That got me into White Sox baseball.
Best mustache ever. The Whammer.
Yes.
The best mustache ever. The Whammer.
And then Konerko was the guy that you always, like, in Little League games, I would always try to emulate. This is one of my mom's favorite stories. So one of my Little League tournaments, I saw Paulie do the double bat tap on the plate and put his hand up to call time. And I just started doing that. And then every kid on my team saw that. I was like, oh, that's really cool. I'm going to start doing it. And she, like, loved that. So Yeah, Konerko is a guy that is so underrated, and I think he gets more love now that he's been away from the game for a little while. But just that dude, if you look at Baseball Reference, if you're out there and you don't know about Paul Konerko, go to Baseball Reference and look him up. Stud.
Who was more underrated though, Paul Konerko or Jermaine Dye on that team?
Jermaine was great, and I think one of the coolest games I've ever watched was the game that JD and Paulie hit 400 in Detroit. I think that was something you'll never see again. Both very underrated. I agree. Like, you brought Jermaine in there with that team, with AJ, with Scotty Pods and Tadahito, and that lineup 1 through 9, Joe Creedy, Rowan, nasty.
Hey, by the way, you know why they hit those back-to-back homers, right? Because the guy on deck was their protection. 300 in Detroit. It was in Detroit. Bring it back to Detroit. Back-to-back. And the guy on deck, I told him, I go, you guys would have never hit that if you didn't have the protection hitting behind you.
Protection? What were they afraid? You were going to hit a single to left?
Yep. Believe it.
Man.
They would have walked them both. It would take me 2 hits to get them in.
Russ, let's go back to what you were saying about the AL Central. Do you feel like you're just, whoever wins the AL Central is just the smartest kid in dumb school? Like, are we honestly, because you cover national, national, and you can probably name the last American League Central team to win a World Series.
Yeah.
And are we wasting our time? Because we're a show that's not about wasting our time. And I'm sure as a writer, you don't want to waste your time. Are you wasting your time, or are you just giving those fans their due?
No, I know a lot of people look at Cleveland, small market. They're not a team that spends big, and they kind of laugh them off. But that's a team that gave a lot of people problems last year. And I look at what the Minnesota Twins did to bolster their rotation. And you add a guy like a Pablo Lopez, who a lot of teams are going after, and you add him into your rotation with a guy like a Joe Ryan. And now you're a formidable team. And I look at that lineup and I say, okay, Correa's back. You trade Arise, who great player, to get Lopez, right? You got to give something up to get something. You add in a guy in Joey Gallo now who plays without a shift for the first time in his career. What does his season look like? Because this is a guy that's hit below 200 at points throughout his career. Well, if there's 30, 40 more hits out there, guy hitting some singles now, and he's hitting 250, that's a different player than the Joey Gallo that we've seen the last 4 or 5 years. You have Correa. Buxton being healthy is so important, right? Because if you look at the numbers when he's in the lineup versus when he's out, when he's in the lineup, it's really hard to beat the Minnesota Twins. When he's not, they are a very average team. And that's something, talking to Rocco Baldelli last year, like, they really need him in the lineup. But it's one of those things where they now have to, how do you protect him, right? Do you DH him a couple of days? Because when he's healthy, he can go out there and get it with the best of them. But you don't want him going out there running into walls anymore, throwing his body around trying to make plays, because he's so valuable offensively as well as defensively.
So, Russell, I think we've beaten the AL Central to death here. So let's talk about the other team in Chicago. Can the Cubs, bringing in the guys they brought in, Bellinger, Swanson, some of the other names, can they compete with, say, the Cardinals and the Brewers in the NL Central?
I think they will compete for a World Series. I think it's a year early, because what I think about the Cubs is after they traded Baez and Bryant and Rizzo, they bottomed out, right? Where there was a lot of guys at the end of that 2021 season who started the year in Double and Triple A. You go into 22, you're really trying to find out what you have on your big league roster. Some of those kids get to the big league level. And then this offseason, you go out and you add your core pieces. So you want Dansby Swanson to be the leader in your room for the next 7 years, to go along with Nico Horner. You find out that Ian Happ is a really, really solid player, goes out and wins a Gold Glove, turns himself into an all-star. You bring in Seiya Suzuki last offseason. Now you have him in that lineup. And then you go out and you get a Trey Mancini, you get a Hosmer, and you increase the veterans that you have in the room and take a gamble on a guy like a Cody Bellinger, who's a couple seasons removed from an MVP, Now you might have something. Are they going to go out there and win 85 or 90 games? I don't think so. But at the same time, you have to be good before you can be great. I tell that to people all the time when thinking about baseball. Like with the Orioles, they had to be good before they can be great. Do we have a lot of expectations for Adley Rutschman? Yeah, and Gunnar Henderson and what Cedric Mullins could do and Anthony Santander. But you got to be good first and prove to yourself and other teams around the league that, okay, we're not a team that should be messed with anymore. And so I think for the Cubs, the Cardinals are the class of that division. Like you look at their lineup, you look at their rotation, what they got in the bullpen, that is the team to beat in the National League Central. It's going to be really hard to beat them. And they just added Wilson Contreras, who played on the north side of Chicago too.
So are you saying, you said, okay, not this year, but next year? Were you priming us to tell us who the Cubs are gonna who they're gonna sign in the offseason, this coming offseason?
I think the biggest complaint from Cubs fans just being here in town, I used to cover that beat, was that why aren't the Cubs spending money? And it was a fair argument because you guys were talking about the Tigers and, they used to spend a lot of money. But if you think about Detroit, it's not the biggest of markets. Chicago is. Like, Chicago's a top 3 market in this country. And so it's understandable for Cubs fans to say, why aren't we spending money to go out and get premier talent? So this year, after a couple of off seasons of not doing it, you go get Jameson Taillon, you go get Dansby Swanson, you go get Seiya Suzuki last offseason, and who knows who they could go out and get this offseason. And so I think, they're probably that 80 win window right now, between 77 and 80. And then who's to say if they don't go out and you acquire something next offseason that you can't put yourself in that conversation to make it to the postseason?
Are they getting Shohei? That's the question. I didn't say it straight out. Are they getting Shohei? Are they going to keep going? I mean, they got Dansby Swanson.
Yeah.
He was probably the number 4 on the 4 best pitchers. I mean, shortstops. And then they got Taillon. Great pickup. But he wasn't the best available out there. So are they going to go after Shohei, or are they going to sign Lucas Giolito next year?
I would be surprised, Kratzy, if they didn't at least make a push for Shohei Ohtani, like in a major market like Chicago, where you can be the number 1 on, the north side and have other guys in that rotation where they don't have to look at themselves and say, dude, do I have to be a number 1? And then he could hit third in that lineup with the pieces that they've already added. That would be a fantastic fit. But there's also 29 other teams that should be in on Shohei Ohtani. And there will, as we saw this offseason, there are going to be teams that pony up and say, hey, here is all the money in the world, Shohei. You can have it.
Dude, you guys are dreaming.
Yeah, dreaming hard.
Do you guys know who owns the Cubs?
Yeah.
Russell, you know who owns
the
Cubs?
I do.
The Ricketts. The Ricketts family.
Right.
They don't spend. They haven't spent. They haven't spent like a. They
got extra.
They do, but they don't spend it. And I think Russell will agree with me. Like, that's the Cubs' main. If you talk to a Cubs fan the last few years, right? They won in 16. They got rid of Baez. They got rid of Rizzo. They did the whole thing with Chris Bryant, right? Well, guess what? They were like, okay, we'll just turn it around quickly because we're the Cubs, mighty Cubs. You go to a Cubs game, they're in last place. There's 35,000 people there. They're selling the hotel. They got the fake grass thing out there filled up. That's the biggest complaint. They don't spend the money. Yeah, Dansby Swanson is a nice player. Cody Bellinger, if he bounces back. Eric Hosmer, there's a reason, though. I love Eric
Hosmer. They didn't do nothing. I get what you're saying.
But they didn't get, like, the guy.
Yeah. But
they could have got Trey Turner. They went for Dansby Swanson.
Trey Turner wasn't going there. He was going East Coast.
I'm just saying.
I get it. I'm not trying to stick up for them.
You'll agree with me, right? Like, the Ricketts have been classically known as a team that doesn't go for the – other than when they got, like, Lester Lackey. But since then, they've kind of taken a step back and said, well, we're making all this money. We're living off 2016. And it kind of a little bit, kind of like the White Sox have done for a while. Like, it's been almost 20 years now. Like, it's time for them to do it.
They've definitely taken a step back from spending. And I understand why you would say they're not out there going and getting any of the big boys, right? But I would have been curious to see if they would have been in on Rafael Devers had he reached free agency and the Red Sox didn't re-up him, right? Like, at some point, you have to go after the big fish, right? You can get complementary pieces. I understand what you're saying, right? So you get a guy in Swanson who's like, okay, that's a leader that we can count on for the next decade. But who is going to be the guy that we say pencil him in number 3 in the lineup, 300, 30, and 100, right? Who's the guy we put at the top of our rotation and say that guy's going to go to the post every 5th day, 30 starts, sub 3, 200 Ks. And I think until that guy appears on the market when they are ascending, I don't know if you're going to see that. But this is the perfect opportunity for them to at least try.
They can try all they want. They ain't getting them. I'm sorry. I mean, I don't think they will. They just won't pony up the money.
There's other okay. I mean,
but I'm saying
we're not going to spend a year just talking about Ohtani as a free agent for every team.
Yes, we are, because
he's going to New York or California.
That's what everyone's talking about, though. He's the main free agent this year.
I understand that.
And the Dodgers, there's a big rumor, as I'm sure Russell could tell us, that the Dodgers didn't make any moves this year because they're waiting to have all their money ready for Shohei.
And they will definitely outbid the Cubs.
They 100%
definitely.
They will.
That's my point. Is this is a waste? Why are we talking about Shohei Ohtani and the Cubs? It's not happening.
I shot it down. I don't know. I don't know.
All right,
that was Eric Kratz's question. I don't know.
True. One more important one for you, Russ.
Okay.
And you can follow Russ at Russ_Dorsey1 on Twitter. Chris Rock special. Did you watch it the other day? Give us your review. Should we watch it? So there's 2. Give us the review and who had the better slap and explanation. Tommy Pham or Rock on Will Smith? Because Pham blew up again the other day and went viral on this show.
All right, so I'll start with the end. Better slap, Pham, 100%.
Yes.
100% Pham.
Agreed.
And better explanation. The Chris Rock special, it's been a year since the slap. Will slapped him publicly. So as a public figure, as a comedian, I got to get some get back publicly, right? I'm allowed. I have that right. Special for the bar that we set for Chris Rock, subpar, right? If I told you you could go see Creed 3 tonight, like I wanted to, or watch Chris Rock, go see Creed 3, right? Like it wasn't. Everybody was waiting for the Will Smith part. It didn't come until the end. Oops, spoiler alert if you hadn't watched it. It was, It was not that good.
No, that's good to know.
Good to know.
Because I didn't know if I needed to jump on it or if it's maybe just for historical purposes at some point I grab it. So
okay, Russ, before we let you go, this is my last question for you. Who wins more games this year, Cubs or White Sox? Ooh. And you know it's important. You know it's important in the city of Chicago. Who's a better team?
It is. Damn, AJ, you're gonna do this to me.
Who wins more games? The White Sox are supposed to.
I'm pulling up futures bets too as we do this just to see where Vegas is at.
You better say the black and white team.
So
I'm gonna ask you this. I'm gonna throw it back on you, AJ.
Okay.
Is everybody healthy?
Well, if I could predict that, then I'd make a lot of money betting baseball. I mean, if I had to guess, because Eloy, Moncada, Robert, they have not stayed healthy ever.
Right.
So I'm going to say they're going to do what they normally do, which is 100 games.
If those guys play 115 games apiece, it's the Cubs, because so much of what the White Sox do is based off of those guys being great, right? Like if you look at what they did to build that roster, they didn't go out and get marquee free agents because there was like, no, these are our marquee guys. Eloy's going to hit 40 home runs, but he has to stay healthy to hit 40 home runs. Moncada is going to be Robinson Cano 2.0. We saw it in 2019 and maybe a little bit in 21, but we've never seen the consistency. I think Robert is a stud, but he has to stay healthy to do that and to show us that he can be that guy. I think Andrew Vaughn is going to be a really talented player in the big leagues for a long time. But guys it can't be one guy stays healthy and have a monster year. They need that group as a whole to be healthy. TA and Moncada and Vaughn and Eloy and Robert. And from what we've seen at this point now, like all this projection, I got to go back on what's on the back of the baseball card. And on what's on the back of the baseball card is those guys are going to play 115 games. And so until I see it, I say from what the Cubs have done, they're probably going to be the better team. I'd be surprised if either made the postseason, but yeah, AJ, that's the answer I have for you, buddy.
Damn you! I just lost all respect. No, I actually gained respect for you.
No, I'll throw numbers out there. just for the crowd too. Right now, Vegas is at 83.5 for the Sox. And for the Cubs, they're at 76.5. Now, out of the park, we use their sim software. We do a weekly segment on win totals. They had the Sox at 79 wins, Cubs at 77. I think some of that has to do with when you're going to have still more crap at the bottom. Oh, that's actually close, I guess.
Let's go White
Pittsburgh
Sox,
and
okay?
Cincinnati.
Russ, let's go White Sox. You better just, at least when you play the Cubs, beat the Cubs, for God's sakes, please.
All right, this is what we're gonna do. This is what we're gonna do, AJ. This is what we're gonna do. You make your appearances in town, and we'll be at the ballpark, and then we'll see where they're at when you're in town.
Okay, I'll be there for opening day for the White Sox, so we can just see where they're at after like 3 games. How's that? We'll go from there.
Works for me. Works for me.
Amazing. Hey, Russ, this was awesome, man. Really appreciate having you on. And, of course, do your thing on Bally Sports. You can see him every day on the rally. Like I said, you can follow him on Twitter. He is very, very well dressed. And, Russ, repping the chain group. Yeah, we got to fix that. Repping the change just like I do sometimes. These guys give me a hard time. So thank you. We teach these old guys how to dress with some accessories, please.
Listen, these guys have been in clubhouses long enough. Sometimes you need a little chain, not one, but 2, little cross action, little Jesus piece. Got the hoop earring in on one side, other earring on the other. Got to let the tats come out. Like, come on, guys. Y'all know how it is.
Fresh.
I get
Gun
it.
show, too.
I can't pull it off.
Russ knows what's up.
No.
Hey, Russ, have a great day.
I can't come on here, Scott, without you showing off the arms and not me put some out there.
Hell yeah. Yeah, no, and he's got the tats with it, too. So Russ gets after it. In the
Dude,
gym.
I can't wait. We got to hang out, Russ, when I come to Chicago because I want to sit down and talk ball with you. So let's do it.
Let's do it, brother.
Russ, great to have you, man. Enjoy the rest of the day. We'll see you on the rally later.
Thanks, guys.
Appreciate you, Russ.